Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see your faces. Please turn on your camera if you can. Make sure you're muted. We're just going to wait 1 minute to let people in. And I will let you, in the meantime, rename yourself with if you were in an academy or GCY gap year and which year you were in. So for example, Tagati, GCY, and I was in the Senegal cohort in 2019. So you can feel free to do that too. And you'll see a Slido link where you can ask your questions during the sessions. And I invite you to type in your questions there. Like you can put your name in the questions, and you can even vote on the questions that you like, so that it's on top. And I will ask those questions during the sessions when speaking to Michaela, probably at the end when she's finished speaking. But just put all your questions, in that Slido link that we just put on the chat. Also, I forgot, feel free to also put your location, which I have not done. I will do it now. So right now I am in Toronto. I know that you guys come from all over the world, so it's good to see where you come from, where you are right now. And also feel free to use the emojis to show appreciation and excitement. And I would like to test it with you guys. So if you are if you are in the morning where you are, do the clapping like this. For example, me, it's the morning, so you can clap. If you are in the afternoon where you are, please use the thumbs up. If you're in the afternoon, use the thumbs up. If you're at night, please use the heart. Ooh, we have all three. Wow, that's amazing. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the slide. So officially, welcome everybody. I'm gonna start. I am Tagati. As I said, I was in the GCY cohort, Senegal 2019. Fun fact, I also come from Senegal. I was born in Senegal. I was raised mostly in Canada, and right now I'm in Toronto. I just graduated from the University of Toronto with a specialist in international development with a minor in political science. And right now I work for the nonprofit called Black Screen Office. And it's a nonprofit that advocates for inclusive and authentic content of Black creators and filmmakers, showmakers in the screen industries in Canada. So in digital media, in the film and TV, and we just fight and work with institutions and production companies to really be more inclusive and create more authentic stories of Black people and Black creators in general. So welcome again. And I just want to give you a quick introduction about this session. So it's called Work Wonders, and Work Wonders is a Global Citizen Year monthly alum-led session showcasing different careers to provide inspiration and guidance to alumni seeking professional direction. So AKA me, AKA you. So it's very helpful for your career, and I hope that you will learn a lot from this session. And today, our speaker will discuss her career journey, her study and working in the film industry, and the perks and the challenges of being in that said industry. And again, if you have any questions, please use the Slido link that's in the chat, and just write any questions that you have, and we will get through them during the sessions. And also don't forget to turn on your camera. If you want, you don't have to, but you can turn on your camera, you can rename yourself, and you can also use your emojis to interact during the sessions. So to that, I'm excited that we're joined today by Michaela Klezmer. And Michaela is working and studying in the field of the documentary filmmaking in Germany. Currently, she's exploring how to tell personal stories based on political issues and how to make them relatable and accessible to a broader public. This is very much inspired by her belief that filmmaking should serve as an emotional form for connecting people among different cultures and knowledge levels, like all of us. Her past and current projects are about an AI surveillance pilot project in Mannheim, sorry, I'm not German, in which an algorithm is being trained to detect suspicious movements about the search for a utopian home for Jews who immigrated to Germany from the Soviet Union, and also about her relationship with a controversial German, Jewish, Israeli Klezmer singer and pro-Palestine activist in Germany. So yes, that was a lot. That was so interesting. So I'm very excited to hear about all of that. And thank you so much, Michaela, for joining us, and thank you for all of us alumni for joining us today. And I hope that you'll enjoy this session. So I will give the floor, sorry, to Michaela, which will she will give us more details about her career journey. And again, if you have any questions, use the Slido link to ask your questions. And at the end, we have a Q&A where I'll ask all of your questions.
Hi, my name is Michaela. First of all, thank you so much for coming here. And I really look forward to speaking with you. And yeah, if you have any questions, please post them in, because I'd really like to, have a conversation with you, regardless of your levels of knowledge of documentary filmmaking. And yeah, so I live in Berlin. I study in film school in the south of Germany. Part of this is due to that I was born in Germany, and then I moved to the US, and then for a variety of reasons decided to study film in Germany. And so I kind of have a little PowerPoint. It's just a bunch of pictures I found because I, thought that if I talk about my career journey, it might be nice to show you some visuals as well, just because film is a visual form. And yeah, so I will just share my screen really quickly. 1 second. Sorry, just 1 second, actually, because for whatever reason, it's not allowing me. Actually, Jeza, do you mind sharing the little PowerPoint I made? Because for whatever reason, it's not letting me do it unless I quit my Zoom and then do it again. Otherwise, we can also wing it.
No, I'm thinking it was very nice. Yeah.
That would be amazing. Thank you. I don't know why.
I don't know why Zoom is always tricky. After 2 years, I still learn every day how to use it. And I don't know why. Is it supposed to be easy?
I don't know. I mean, alternatively, I could go back into the Zoom.
No, please don't disappear.
Okay. I mean, I can just keep talking, actually. Maybe that's the best way to deal with the situation. Yeah, so I think that normally I think if you ask a film student, what was the moment that you decided to do documentary filmmaking? They're like, when I was a young child of 3, somebody put a camera in my hand and I was spellbound. And, when I was 4 or 5, I was making films. I mean, that's not my story. I don't remember when I decided to want to do documentary filmmaking, but I remember when I was 17 and I was in a math class, and the teacher, I was kind of doing quite badly in school, actually. I was failing out, and it was actually quite bad. And so then the teacher asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? And then I started in this point of school, I was very aware of what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do math. I didn't want to do English. I didn't want to do all of these things, and I didn't have the motivation to do them. And then I started thinking positively, and then I just thought it would be nice to be a documentary filmmaker. I knew nothing about it, but from this point on, I decided I was just going to do it. It sounded nice. I thought I was going to run around in a war zone and film and save thousands of lives. It was a bit of a white savior fantasy, I would say. And so anyways, then I was accepted to Global Citizen Year, to a program in Senegal. And again, it wasn't Global Citizen Year that made me want to pursue documentary filmmaking, but Global Citizen Year, specifically my experience of living in Joal Fadjout in Senegal for 7 months, it really made me develop a framework for asking questions around ethics as well as the impact of filmmaking. And so I actually, maybe does it make sense if I share I have like a WeTransfer link, and then maybe everyone can look through the pictures of their own, or should I just keep, is it okay if I do that? I would just quickly do that, yeah.
Sure, I can share it with people.
Okay, that would be super, yeah. And so, I mean, I think that like, I think a lot of the processes of like, of documentary filmmaking, like you don't think about it. You don't really think about like what happens when you hold a camera, right? There's like, in the standard documentary filmmaking industry, there's this expectation that the ideal director is one that disappears as soon as the film is being made. So you like, my questions are not, they don't come in the final film. The person doesn't look into the camera, like God forbid there's any sort of an interaction, right? And it's a strange like power dynamic that ensues of like who has the power to be invisible and then who is made visible, right? And so I began to be really aware of that while I was in Senegal, just because, you know, I was like the tubab, like the white foreigner, like holding the film camera, doing what every tubab kind of does, which is like filming around and like filming like the interesting exotic people, the interesting exotic food, you know, like the filming the interesting exotic, like fill in the blank. But it became quite aware to me that like as somebody holding a camera, like I'm not invisible. Instead, when I hold the camera, like it creates like an extra visibility, right? So I'm not just like tubab, but I'm like the tubab with the camera, and then people kind of play with that. So they're like tubab, come over here, like tubab, take a picture. And so it was, while at the same time, of course, being like very much a part of this like power dynamic of who is filming. And so I don't know if you have the keynote open right now. Maybe it makes sense to, I don't know if you can go to page 3. Yes, okay, super. So on page 3, you see some like black and white photographs. Is everyone able to access these photos? No? Is anyone having issues? Maybe you can like raise your hand and. Okay, Hannah, you're having issues. Maybe I can try to, or is it possible for someone to message you the link?
Don't worry. I think look, if others can see, then that's fine. Oh, there we go.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. I think like before I talk about like what is possible within documentary filmmaking, it's really important to like address what are the roots of documentary filmmaking, right? But also to explore them within like their colonial history. So to the left, for example, if you could just zoom out like a tiny bit so that the picture, yes. Okay, on the left, you have a picture from like it's considered like the first documentary film. It's called Nanook of the North. And it's it's filmed in the north of Canada, so in the indigenous regions there. And it has like this protagonist Nanook, who's where he's shown like doing various things like hunting in like very traditional ways. And here you see him, and he's like been giving a record, so something like from the West, and he doesn't know what to do with it, and so he bites into it, right? And it's a sort of gag and a joke. The thing is that Nanook of the North, it was filmed like at a time when actually like there was westernization in the north of Canada, right? Like the protagonist who played Nanook, like he knows what a record is. He wasn't hunting like in this like older way, like they were using guns. But all of these things were taken out to create this sort of like essentialized concept of the native, right? The pristine native. And to the right, you have Margaret Mead, who was like a very famous anthropologist. And she was doing she was doing like mainly written anthropology, but she also evolved a sort of like visual anthropology. So like ethnographic filmmaking. And so in some of her films, what she did was she compared like child rearing across 3 different cultures. And so like here, for example, I think this picture might be in one of her projects, and where so she usually what she does is she takes like 2 like Southern cultures, 1 Western culture, and the premise, and you show like a mother raising a child, right? And so like what the facet of it is, like at the very end, the whole point of the film is to show that like the West does it better, right? And so like again, like what I just want to point out with all of this, you know, and to link back to the experience of me being like a tubab with the camera in Senegal, is that like documentary filmmaking is like very much interwoven in certain power structures, right? And like I will always be a tubab. Like in 95% of the places of the world, I will be like the white girl, right? And so like, so the question is like, how can I make films for myself? Where I can maybe address these things, where maybe I cannot contribute to these power dynamics by becoming the invisible director, because by being the invisible director, I'm actually not addressing this, but how can I like visualize certain things, right? So like more or less, or, you know, maybe it's not about me at the film. And at that point, of course, I'll take myself out. But then the question is also like, what can I contribute to this project, right? If I'm not from the culture, for example. So these are very like theoretical things. I'd also like to get more practical, but these are sort of some of the questions and ethical frameworks that are like, that like go through my decision-making processes, and where I have not at all found an answer. Like I will continue to make mistakes, and I hope like that the mistakes I will make in the future are not as, you know, or maybe a little bit more refined mistakes. Yeah. And then I think another thing that I'm also like very much working on is like how to see documentary filmmaking not only as like an art form, which many people in my film school in Germany, like it's a very like white German film school, I have to say, where like people like maybe also grew up mainly in Germany. And so film is considered this art, and you're like the artiste when you do a film, right? And so I'm curious, just like, and the very basics, to see how film can be something super concrete. Like it's just like, it doesn't have to be art, but it's something that's created in society, and that goes back to society, right? It's created like from specific perspectives that form the film, and then it will go on and it can impact like people in that society. So that's another thing that I'm also thinking about. Maybe you could go to the first picture, actually. So it's like really mundane, but like when I was in Senegal with my camera, I was working in this boutique, La Boutique de la Dynamique Femme, so like the boutique of the dynamic lady. And it was this like boutique in Senegal, and they were like making products, and I was there for 7 months, and I was like learning and failing how to do like I was terrible at sewing, I was terrible at a lot of things, but I could take pictures. And so then I was thinking about like at the very end of this project, like how can I link like my networks in the US in with other volunteers in Senegal with this boutique, because the boutique, they made amazing products, but they had like terrible business strategy, because also they were in the back of the center, and then in front of the center there was like a men's group that was selling things, and they were selling like cheap stuff produced in China, but they had the front, and like nobody knew about the existence of this women's group in the back, right? And so then I was like, I tried to make a sign, like I made a big sign that said like La Boutique de la Dynamique Femme. The women in the boutique, they laughed at me. They were like, tout baby, you know, like the white foreigner, okay. And then actually during the night, somebody ripped it down, like probably one of the guys. So it didn't work. And so then I just decided that, okay, you know what, like at a certain point, I'm going back to the US, and I can fill a suitcase with products, and I can like connect the people I know from other people who were volunteering in Senegal and their families, and the people I have in the US like with this boutique. And it was just a really simple thing of, you take pictures, and through this picture, there's a very simple exchange, a material exchange of products, like financial exchange of money, right? Done. Like this is just like the basic of film as just something concrete and not art, and still it can have like a little bit of an impact, right? And then I would skip like a lot of these things because I realized that my timing is not ideal right now. So after GCY, I decided to study anthropology instead of studying film. One of the reasons I studied anthropology was because if you could go one slide back, actually, that would be great. Yeah. One of the reasons I decided to study anthropology was because after GCY, I was so fascinated by like relativity of like cultural truths, right? Of like, you grow up in a specific culture and you think you know everything, right? And maybe like me, okay, I grew up in 2 cultures, US and Germany, but I thought that was it. Then I went to Senegal, I go to a culture, and it like, you know, it gives you this whole new input. It turns your like truths on your head, right? And so, yeah, so I decided to do something academic. And while doing that, I was also doing a lot of internships. And for internships, there were like a number of different things I did. I think the only thing I want to say with internships is they're necessary, but I think it's really important within this exploitative field of documentary filmmaking to really make sure that you only do something if you can get something from it, right? And so like, at first I was like very non-strategic in internships, and I was like, okay, I just need like things in my resume, like it doesn't matter what. And I think like after my, I don't know, maybe I've done like 4 or 5 internships in my life. Maybe it's not a lot. I think other people have done more, but I would say like either like make sure that there's some sort of an exchange going on. For example, the reason why I wanted to show these pictures is because in this particular internship, my boss taught me how to edit. And then he also allowed me to participate in like a film camp, which would normally cost like $3,000, right? So like, always like, just because you're young doesn't mean that you should, like, just because you're not getting paid, for example, if that's the case, it doesn't mean that you should just work for free and just give. Like, you need to be given something back, right? And so that's just something I would say if you're starting out new, like, what can you get back, and negotiate with these people. Because honestly, like, if you're not only working for free, but like working a shitty job so that you can work for free, like, you want to make sure you're getting something. And you're also like, you have negotiating power. I think that's the thing, like in the film business, maybe I'm very cynical, but I think it's better to be cynical. Like, people will take everything that they can, and they will, like, people will not try to give unless it's absolutely necessary and they can get something from it. So yeah, make sure you only do something if you can really either, like, maybe you're trying to just like network in the city you're in. Like, one mistake I made was doing internships in different places where I didn't plan to live. And I think especially if you want to be in the film business, pick a city that you would like to live in, and from there, only then do internships there so you can get to know people. Because like, more or less, like the people who I know who did internships and then later on lived there, like, they're getting jobs there. And then like another thing would be like, if it personally really interests you, then find a way to do it. Like, I think that like personal interest is like, it's huge. It's the reason why we do films. Or if, you know, as before mentioned, if you're like getting some sort of like a learning process and an active learning process out of it. Yeah. And I think just to like touch a little bit on like the projects that I've worked on, if you go to the slide afterward, yeah, so then this is an example of an internship that I did in Austria, which is like my citizenship is that I'm Austrian. And so it was a magazine that I worked with, like, for and by Austrians with like migration background. So like non-ethnic Austrians, you could say. And so it was an interesting magazine because it's very much about like opening up this sort of idea of Austrian identity and like away from this like sort of like Germanic ethnicity and opening to like many others. And this was also 2016. So it was like while many refugees were still coming in, right? And so I worked with a journalist and a friend of mine, Zakaria. You can see him like on the top to the left. And what we decided to do, like going back to this idea of like media as something that can just connect people, is that like he was somebody who was like very much participating in Austrian society. He'd come from Syria maybe like 2 years ago. But like he noticed that like many other Syrians in the area were not, like they were like, for many factors, they were not able to like be a part of the Austrian society. There was not really a culture of welcoming. There were like a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. And then, and so what we decided to do is he wanted to do like a mini web series where first like Austrians ask refugees questions, and then refugees ask Austrians questions to get a sort of like a conversation going on like in a virtual way, if it's not going to be possible in a face-to-face way. And so what we did is here are different like Austrians and mainly Syrians actually. Actually, I think either Austrians or Syrians who were like asking and answering questions. And And I mean, like the funny thing too is looking back at it is like the questions the Austrians were asking were like, it was like it was like part of the sort of like refugee narrative of like, do you feel welcomed here? Do you want to go back home? Like it's questions that you ask when you don't have much like contact with a specific group, right? And you kind of have these like stereotypes. At the same time, it's kind of like, it's nice to see it as like a sort of like archive material of like how the mentality was. Yeah. And then maybe we can go to the next project. Yeah, the next project, this was in Beirut, so in Lebanon, and it was a project for Act for the Disappeared, which is looking at the 17,000 people in Lebanon who disappeared during the Civil War. And so me as like a non-Lebanese person, I came to do like the video and sound Aufnahmen, like to record the sound in the video. So I was working with people, Noura and Hassan, who were both from Beirut, who were like very involved. And what we would do is we would do interviews with people who were either suffered, the victims during the time, or they were like actively like maybe part of the militaries, which were involved in like the killings and disappearances of people. And we would go to the actual areas in Lebanon where there were checkpoints, and film there. And so I guess the reason why I say this is because it made me aware that like, even if I don't have like a deep knowledge of like Lebanese culture, I can still like by way of knowing how to do like recording, be a part of different projects, right? Of like areas that might interest me, but not necessarily do the directing. And then, but it also made me really aware that like in terms of my technical know-how, like I really need to improve. And this was then the reason why I went to film school, which is the next slide. The Film Academy Baden-Württemberg. This is my school right now. And it's not like the end all be all, but it's where I currently study, where I work on projects. And then, and it's very like more of this like artsy space. So it's like very much the idea is like you make a film, you show it then in a festival, and if you're really lucky, it plays in a cinema. So like a sort of like exclusive look at documentary filmmaking. Like the point isn't to show the film in public spaces, but it's to show the film in a way that you get prestige, which is important. Like I don't want to live, you know, like in like, yeah, like at a certain point, prestige is important because it's linked to funding. It's part of like your survival as a documentary filmmaking. But it feels to me like empty if you're not bringing the film back into society. So if you could just go to the next slide. Here is yeah, so this is a film I worked on called All Eyes on You, and it's about a surveillance project in Mannheim. And it's an area in Germany where there's like a lot of like migration background. So like more than 50% of the people are not ethnic Germans. There's a lot of police surveillance already in these areas, right? And it's like very working class. Like historically, the city is like a city of workers and immigrants. And so they started building like an algorithm-based surveillance system where they installed 67 cameras with an algorithm to detect suspicious movements. And so, and it was a project that was funded by like the police, the city of Mannheim, and also the state of Baden-Württemberg, which is, yeah. And so, and what you can see is like in the film, we spoke with the police, we spoke with the professor of AI, and we spoke with people living in the surveilled areas. And like one of our focuses was the like idea of police profiling, right? So like the police profiling of minorities living there, the police profiling of like people who are not living standard lives, so who are living on the street maybe, and how this profiling can then be reproduced within the algorithm. So if you could go to the next slide. So yeah, so the question was like, how will, like once the film was ready, like how can we show the film? And so in the middle, you see there's like the film festival route where the film is shown in a film festival. It's like a mainly white, like middle to upper class German speaking audience there. It's like, it's an important part of like getting recognition as a filmmaker to accessing funding. But it was also important that this film is kind of like an educational tool, but also that like people who are actively working on the cause of police profiling, like maybe like, I don't know, like learn something about this project that is going on. And so to the right, you can see it's a school screening in a school in Bosnia, where we had like a screening in 2 classes, and where like it was then discussed. And that was something that was important, so that like the younger generations like kind of see what's happening. Because since now the project has been implemented in 3 cities. And then if you look to the left, it's a poster, because I never make photos of myself doing stuff, but it's a poster for an organization. It's called COP, which looks at like racialized police violence in Germany. And so we had like a screening and a discussion in like in this situation in Germany, like with people who are activists who are actively working on this. And I think I will actually skip like the next projects, but only to say that like these documentaries, these are like school projects, but also maybe I've also done work with like a theater, for example, to conceptualize of a documentary film project. But a lot of the work that you're going to do as a documentary filmmaker is not doing documentary directing. So I've done translating, I've done subtitles, I've done organization for like workshops or like film workshops. I do like secretarial work for this other organization. And unfortunately, like this is like documentary filmmaking is something you do where for the most part, like you're not going to be able to directly do this all the time. So it's a compromise. So you develop certain skills, like here you can see I'm doing sound, like, so I've done like sound work on some productions, for example, or camera work. On other productions, that's how you make your money. And then you work on your films not on the side, but it's something where you constantly have to do like side jobs in order to do it. So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's financially very unstable. It's still fascinating. I'm still going to try to do it until I can't do it anymore. I don't know if this is the optimism, but maybe it's a tragic kind of optimism, yeah. So yeah, maybe we can just open it for questions, or if there's anything I've left out, like please let me know.
Yeah, that was so great. Like I didn't know what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised. Like, wow. I'm gonna open it to questions. I see a lot of questions on Slido. Please write all your questions on Slido. But before I go to that, I just have some comments that like when you were talking, like I was so fascinated. And going back to what you were saying at the beginning, like you were talking about like who is visible and who is not visible in documentary. And I think with documentary, it's so tricky because it's nonfiction. And so people assume that like it's facts, it's factual, and like what you see is like what's happening because it's a documentary. It's supposed to tell a story without like a lot. It's not a narrative, it's not a fiction. But I feel like, and also what you're saying is like the making of the documentary is structured in a way that's like there's still a narrative, and it's again like it shows into like who are you questioning, and like how are you questioning them, what type of question are you questioning them, how you're portraying them, what's the, I feel like maybe, I mean, you can speak to it more, but like even though it's not a story, it's not a fiction, but you still have a narrative to tell. And as a documentary it can be tricky because you have to, like, it's factual, but you have to make it like meaningful and like with like no biases and like away from like structural powers. And I'm glad that you like recognize this. And I also had another comment because you were talking about like you being a tubab, which is like a white person in Senegal. And I find it funny because, I mean, you did not want the attention because you were like a white person in a prominently Black area and it was not your country. But let me tell you that even for me, like as a Senegalese person in Senegal, I was also called a tubab. And I was also an outsider. So we relate and it's like in very different ways. But I think in terms of like cultural relativism is very important because like like Senegal is not your culture, so you have to be mindful of that. Senegal is my culture, but I still don't know everything about it. I cannot claim that I know everything about it, and I still have a lot of things to learn. And I have made mistakes too, and I have been called to Bab, as I said. So like, it's hard. Like, there's no one answer to this. There's no one culture. There's different way to view that culture, and it's very important, especially for documentary, to like grasp all these differences. So that was for me. Sorry, I blah blah a lot, but let me go to one question.
Maybe just to pick up on that really quickly though, because I think it's really important and fascinating what you say, and I can relate to that too. Right? Is like I mean, I think there's the question of like who is making the film, and right, like there's a lot like now with like identity politics of like who should make the film, not who is allowed. Anyone is allowed, obviously. And if you look at like who's making the film, it's still mainly like the white person making the film, right? So I don't like this sort of like question of who is allowed, because regardless of what like the moral debate is, there's also like what's happening on the ground, which is pretty much saying like similar, I would say, maybe a little less, but so I think that what you're saying, I think, is super fascinating, Tagati, because it's like the question of like what culture do you then belong to, right? Like what is your voice? And I think it's really fascinating too, like the sort of like insider outsider perspective when you make films. And so like, especially if you're like you're part of one culture but not really, but you still have this sort of like acceptance. Yeah. But I think just one thing to make it more concrete is like, I think a huge issue with like the sort of like essentializing of cultures or like biases has to do with the funding system in Germany, where like if you want to make a film about like another country, let's say I want to go to Senegal again and make a film, then a lot of the funding is regionally tied, which means most of the money has to go out to the region of that country. So if I get 100,000 euros to make a film from Berlin, then I have to get a crew from Berlin, basically, right? So which already is like maybe I can find someone in Berlin who either has Senegalese background and speaks like Wolof or Serer or one of the languages, right? Or I can find somebody who's German and has like a connection to Senegal, but the chances are very rare. And like the chances are much higher that like I will be working with a German crew that has no idea about the culture. And yeah, unfortunately, that leads to a lot of like reproduction of stereotypes.
Yeah, that's totally great. So I'm gonna go to Slido, and just a heads up that like if I ask a question, you have the opportunity to be spotlighted. So you can ask directly your question to Michaela, and if so, please feel free to turn on your camera. And also you can also upvote the question that you like on Slido. So I'm seeing a trend in the questions, so I'm gonna ask them together. And a lot of us are wondering, like, because you were talking about like, you know, like it's not a stable life, like you have like you change countries or cities, and like it's a little bit unpredictable. So people were wondering, like, how does your job affect your lifestyle? And how is it like, especially as a woman in the industry, like how do you navigate how do you navigate in this world, and how does it affect your lifestyle? And even like, are you able to make money? How do you get your money? And yeah, so your lifestyle, Michaela.
Yeah, it's a huge question. And I think actually if you want to succeed and have a network, you need to be really rooted. Like ironically, I stopped traveling when I started doing documentaries. Like I didn't have the flexibility or the freedom anymore, like either because of like working hours, where I just didn't have the time, or because there's like a lot of like uncertainty about maybe you get a job, maybe you don't get a job. And so you have to wait to see if it'll happen because you're so dependent on getting this next job or not, right? So yeah, and then there's like many different ways that people make money. Like now, like being a student is different because you can get government support, right? In Germany too, it's like it's not socialist, but it goes a little bit more in like the socialist direction. And so there's in general like governmental support. Like I don't have to worry about sleeping on the street, right? But I mean, the question of like how do people after school do documentaries, it's difficult. I mean, a lot of people do image films, which is kind of like a glorified documentary style advertisements. You can, yeah, a lot of people freelance, but it's very, very unpredictable. So freelance means you're not like working for a company and working a set number of hours, but instead you kind of get the jobs that you get. The advice I was given by a former boss of mine, who I very I respect him a lot, but he said, marry rich. And like, the thing is, he actually, like, his wife was like the one, she wasn't rich, but she has a stable job. And so she was like financing both of them. There's like, yeah, I mean, I'm partially still being like supported by my parents, right? At 30, which is like, one, it's like not something that many 30-year-olds are proud of, but it's also like a thing of privilege of who can be supported by their parents, like at 30 again, when they decided to go back to school. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how to, like, it, I don't know how to do it. It takes years. It takes, like, what I will most likely do is to get like a fixed side job somewhere. Don't know if you say side job, but to work like 20 hours a week to have a stable income. Because until you have a certain standing, like, it's really difficult to freelance. And I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what kind of like concrete things I can say. I don't want to end this negatively either. Like, I think you just need to get to know people, and you need to expand your networks like beyond just the film industry. Like, there's a lot of small businesses that need you to make films, and if you can like get in contact with them, that's a great way. Like, you're not making art, but you're still like getting paid like to do something that's still within the film industry. There's workshops you can do, like if you can pair with like people who are already doing workshops working with youth, then what you can maybe do is add a film element to it. Like, I've done that before. Like, if you're living in a country which has like a fairly large budget for education, there's like, definitely, if you have hard skills, if you have camera skills, maybe you won't work as a camera person, but you can work as a camera assistant. Many people work as editors. It's a really good way to make money. It's a very well-paid job. Yeah, if you can do sound is great, especially if you're a woman who can do sound. Usually, like, if you're working in like a sensitive subject, people are like, where you're working with women, or the subject is women, then usually they want to have like all women teams. So yeah, there's ways, but like, it takes a long time to get your foot into it. And like, I don't know anybody who's not like financially struggling right now. Like, we're still new, but it's not like, you have a degree and you're set or something. Right?
Yeah,
like, yeah.
working the other hand of it, like the back scene, backstage, I don't know how you call it, like, because I'm supporting artists like you, for example, and like, I think I hear a lot of people who struggle financially, and like, this is why I said at the beginning, like I wanted to do filmmaking, but I didn't have it in me, because I'm a stable person. Like, I like stability, and like, I'm not fitted for that role, but I'm glad that you are. But a lot of them are saying that they usually have full-time jobs, like they have day jobs, and like they often choose jobs that are very low maintenance, so that they have more time to write or like to like network and stuff like that. And those people usually have 2 jobs, like daily, or 3 jobs even. And even for like, I mean, I guess it's different in Europe or in Germany, but like, for example, in Canada or the US, like there's a lot of organizations like mine, like nonprofits that give grants and programs for filmmakers. And this also could be a route that you can use, because we have a lot of money. Like, these organizations have a lot of money, and like, we just need to spend it. And like, we're gonna support anybody that have a like good project, and like a good plan. So we just give them the money, and like, we bring people to festivals, because festivals is good to network and find like producers and directors and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a hard question. That was very difficult. But talking about networking, do you have any like tips and like like, what do I need to know how to network? Because I don't know how to network, but I feel like in your field, you need to network a lot. So how do you do it? How do you make it great?
Yeah, that's something I'm trying to figure out as well. I think there's sort of like, you know, when you go to film festivals, then it's a place where many people come together and you have like the important people over there and everyone's like, oh, that's a person from that network. Like, I think those people are generally not interested in speaking to you at that point because the important people are looking for the important people, right? In these large organizations. So I think something that like ways that I've networked, which have been like successful in terms of getting to know people, is to approach people like in a one-on-one way in festivals. Like even people I have no idea who they are, I just go up to them, they seem interesting. Maybe they're not this huge name and you connect with them. And like at a certain point, maybe you're friends, maybe you stay in touch. And like through one person I met at a film festival, I got like a 3-month project with a theater, which was lovely. Another thing you can do is like, I was in a workshop, it was like on the archive material, and I noticed that one of the participants in the workshop was like very interested in like Middle Eastern cinema, right? And so then I was like very curious, like, because this is also a direction I would like to go in. And so then I just wrote to her, like, I was like, hey, by the way, like, I found your work interesting. Do you want to have a coffee? And so yeah, I think if you want to network, I think it's really important to like build up a small connection first. That's maybe not just like, oh, hi, like I'm a struggling filmmaker, fund my projects, but like, so who are you? And like, what do you do? And like to find those shared interests and maybe to find an intimate enough space to do that. Yeah, because you can send a lot of emails to important people and then they're just gonna get lost if you don't have a face to match them to.
Yeah, and to that, like I heard that like sometimes like when you meet people in person, like in festivals, it can be very random, but like exchanging by email afterward and having a follow-up like within the day or the week that you meet the person is very good. Like follow-ups are very great for networking. And oh, Melina, are you here? Melina, you had a good questions, and if you want to come up and ask Michaela, that would be great. Melina?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, my camera is broken. That's why you can't see me right now. I was wondering. I was planning for a long time to do a documentary on women's rights in Iran. Obviously, I can't go to Iran anymore. Right now, at least. But I was thinking about doing some a documentary on maybe like diaspora of women. Like Iranian women outside of Iran. But I don't know where to start because I never did documentary film before. So I was wondering if you have any advice, any tips. Where do I start? Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Are you from Germany or?
Yeah, this is like such a heavy German accent. I don't know.
No, it's nice to hear. But yeah, it's difficult. I would say, like, do you have people who you already know that you want to work with them, or do you like, is there a specific space where you know, like, these are like, this is an Iranian like feminist space in the diaspora, and here are people I can potentially like portray?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Iranian myself, the German Iranian. So I already have a community and people I would reach out to.
Okay, cool. Let me think about it because it's a large question, and I think I'd like to, like not just like quickly answer it in a minute because I think that every question also has like a specific way. But maybe you could write to me, like I don't know, afterward maybe we could share my email and I could try to like link you with people. Are you based in Berlin, by the way?
I'm based in Berlin and Dublin. So yeah.
Maybe that's the best way. Like, I'm sorry, I don't have a quick answer, but I don't think that it would be like fair to just give a quick answer.
No, don't worry about like, thank you so much for even like taking the time. I will just wait until I see email and write you then. Thank you so much.
Great. This is why we're doing this. You're making connections. This is networking right there. We have a question from Shiza, which is one of our staff member, a lovely staff member. Do you want to come up and ask your question?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hey, thank you so much for bringing me up, and Michaela, thank you so much. It's been really insightful. I guess my question is, I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are some of the soft or hard skills that you feel like helped you like succeed? Well, I know you're still like growing in your field, whatever, but what are some skills that have been very beneficial to you in your field?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I realized this was one of the things I was supposed to address that I forgot to address. I apologize. Yeah, I think, I mean, I think it depends on like what kind of a film director you want to be. For me, it's really important that I'm a bit of an all-rounder, that I can like know how to do camera, I can know how to do sound, I can know how to produce. Like in the worst case, I can do it on my own, even though my goal is not at all to do another project on my own. And so I think like having like hard facts in all of these domains is very important to me. But I think there's definitely like language skills, for example, like speaking certain languages which allow you to connect to people in different ways. Then, like for example, here in Germany, like I'll do like I will film with people who don't have German background, right? And like one, visually they see I also don't have German background. That's not a skill, that's just a fact of life. And then, but if I can also speak their language, then it's like an extra connection, which then also translates into the film. I think something I need to work on is being organized. It's extremely important to be organized, to follow up when you get a contact, then just completely like just write to them immediately so that you've created a network. And I think like I think humor has helped a lot. But that's just something very personal, right? Like maybe I'm terrible at being organized and very chaotic, like humor is my saving grace. Other people, like they're organized, they're professional. I don't have professionality. So I think sometimes people work with me because they think like they want to spend time with me, they want to hang out. I don't know. So like that's, yeah, maybe sometimes it's just good to be like somebody that people want to spend time with. Like really, I do think it helps you get jobs, yeah. But also being firm. Don't try to be likable. Because likable, it means like being stepped on in this industry. So you have to set your boundaries too. I don't know if that's a hard skill. It's just like, it's in general, it's a skill I feel like you need to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely. And there's 4 minutes left, so I'm just gonna ask you one last question, and it's just like, what are you doing next? Like, what's next in your journey? Are you gonna focus on your study or more documentary? Are you gonna take a break? What do you plan? What are you planning on doing?
So I'm currently going to enter the editing process of a film that I'm doing where it's a portrait of Nerit. She's like a German-Israeli Jewish Klezmer singer and actress who's also a pro-Palestine activist, which here in Germany is just like drama, like this whole combination, right? And so I'm doing this portrait of her, and then I want my next project to be on the larger debate around anti-Semitism and critique of Israel in Germany. So I go to a lot of meetings. I try to hear a lot of different perspectives from different sides in the debate. And I will continue my studies and hopefully keep making networks, try to figure out like concretely what are fields that I can get like a day job in. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to like scare people off, because I think it's just like, if you just, if you kind of say like, okay, then the next years are going to be hard, and there's just going to be like a lot of instability, whether it's work stability or financial stability, if you can like mentally, but also in a way like financially support that, how do you not accept that? Like if you can accept that for yourself, then I really do think that that it does get better if you find like your kind of niche. This is very optimistic of me. I'm normally not this optimistic, but I think that it's important to have this this sort of like almost like goal, like this sort of like at the end of the tunnel. I think that somehow it's possible, and in the worst case, then okay, you work a job in something else, like that's good too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like being realistic and being prepared. Like I think that's totally fair. Like this is what you're living, what you experience, and that's fair to share it. So yeah, I'm gonna close it up. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. That was very insightful. If you want to connect to Michaela, I'm sure that she'll sorry, I'm throwing you under the bus, but I'm sure that if you have any follow-up questions, you can always reach out to one of us. And let's have a virtual round of applause. You can also use your emoji. That was so great. Thank you so much. And please, there's a survey that that's on the chat. You can please take to have feedback so that we can give you a better experience next time. So please leave a feedback. Do the survey. It's gonna take not even like 5 minutes. Yes. So by the way, Senegal is playing at the World Cup right now. So if you want to support them, they're winning right now. It's the halftime. So you can check that out. And yes, I will leave you be. Thank you for coming again, people. It was very great. And hope to see you again in the next Work in Wonders sessions.